You've been listening to the Smart Injury Doctors Podcast, the #1 audio production show for professionals in the U.S. injury market that want to deliver better injury services to the patients, clients, or insureds they serve. If you like what you heard today, please leave us a review and don't forget to join us on our next program.
Hello, doctors. Today's topic, what I want to talk about is, should attorneys have to study the injuries that they represent? I just posted this on Facebook a little while back, and it's so interesting, the responses that I get, because a lot of the responses are no. That's why they have us, the chiropractor, because we're the experts. So they shouldn't have to know anything about the injuries that they represent. And I think that is so bizarrely wrong. Of course they should have to study the injuries that they represent. There's no other attorney in law or the practice of law that does not study the condition that they represent. The only ones that don't do that are the personal injury attorneys. And what I'm talking about now is spinal injuries. The average personal injury attorney's IQ on spinal injuries is very low. Very low. Now, the thing that they will say, and the thing that these doctors will say on a Facebook post like this, is they will say, well, look, I totally rely on the doctors. And here's what I'm going to tell you. Same thing I tell attorneys is, attorneys are selling the severity of the injuries to the insurance industry. Basic attorneys are settlement brokers. Only about 2% of the cases nationally go to court. Right? In court and in trial, yes, you may need to hire experts. But prior to that, 98% of them, you're not hiring experts to settle cases over the phone. You're simply not. So the attorney is the insurance settlement broker. And I've said this with my friends that are attorneys. I've said it in seminars, and I stand by it. Attorneys are settlement brokers for the most part. Now, we're not going to talk about the high-end trial attorneys. I said, we're not going to talk about the 1% to 2%. Let's talk about the majority of cases that settle without any sort of trial or ever going to court. The attorney is selling the injury, right? So for doctors to say that the attorney does not need to know or study intensively the injuries that they represent is false. That's probably one of the biggest problems in the market today, because now you have attorneys who know nothing about the injuries saying everyone's got to have an MRI, everyone's got to have an MRI, everyone's got to have an MRI. And there's no rhyme or reason for it. There is no rhyme or reason for it. A lot of patients who have auto accidents have symptoms that are not even suggestive of a disc herniation. But everyone's got to have an MRI. Why? Because in the injury market, the blind are leading the blind. It's 100% true. Now, on the medical side, on the chiropractic side, on the PT side, none of the medical schools have any formalized training on spinal injuries. Now, that's not a pleasant thing for most professions to talk about. It's not a pleasant thing for my profession to talk about. No DC in any chiropractic college, or no PT in any PT college, or no DO in any DO college, or no MD in any MD college has had a formalized curriculum on spinal injuries, right? So when I say the blind leading the blind, the worst thing that we see in the market today is attorneys directing care. That it couldn't get any more blind than that. Now, how do you have attorneys directing care that have never studied the condition that they're now supposedly directing? This is it's a major problem. It's a major problem in the market today. What I said earlier is there is no other attorney that does this. So if I'm harmed in a contract, right, I'm going to hire a contract attorney, and that contract attorney studies contracts. They geek out on contracts. They know everything there is to know about contracts. You know, if somebody has a asbestos problem, you're not going to an attorney that says, look, I don't know anything. I don't know jack about asbestos. But you know what? I can hire a lot of experts that do. Would you want any attorney like that? Nobody would. It's ridiculous, right? It's absolutely ridiculous. You would not want an attorney like that. right? Could you imagine going to a brain injury attorney that says, look, I don't know jack about brain injuries. I don't study them. You know what? I don't do anything with them. I know experts that know things, and that's what I do. That would be ridiculous, and it'd be ridiculously expensive. Imagine going to a divorce attorney. Let's say you had I'm just taking as an example. You went to a divorce attorney and they said, you know what? I don't really know anything about divorce. I don't study divorce. I don't study how money works. I don't study accounting. I don't study what I need to know to help my client through this issue of a divorce. I don't know anything about money. When you come in, you got to pay me $300 or $400 an hour, and then I'm going to hire all these experts because I really don't have to know anything about anything. That's what people say. That's when we start talking about, wow, should an attorney that's representing a condition, let's say they're representing seatbelt malfunctions, right? Should they actually, if they're representing seatbelt malfunction, should they have to study seatbelts? Should they be required to have working knowledge of this? And as they do it, obviously throughout time, more and more and more knowledge comes their way. Is that the case, or should they not have to study at all? The doctors that say that personal injury attorneys should not have to study like something simple like spinal injuries should stop complaining about getting their bills cut. They should stop complaining about the fact that the attorney doesn't understand them, or they feel misunderstood by the attorney. They should stop complaining about all of that, because the root cause of that is an uneducated attorney. So I am one that says, yes, all attorneys should be, if they're representing spinal injuries, they should study the spinal injuries that they represent. That's why we have a program called the Smart Injury Lawyers Program. It's a program specifically for lawyers so that they can start to formally study the condition that they represent. Look, spinal injuries are easy. Yes, and I agree. The attorney does not need a total doctorate on injuries, but they need the basic understanding of injuries. In the spinal injury market, there's only 3 injuries that we have to train them on anyway. It's not like there's that many injuries. You know, there are consequences to these injuries. Other systems can get injured, but if we're talking about the spine, it's just bone and connective tissue injuries. So learning about spinal injuries is incredibly important. And if you have a lawyer that does not want to, like I would, as a patient, if I was a patient, there's no way in hell I would hire an attorney that doesn't study the condition that they want to represent with me. If I had a brain injury, there's no way I would want an attorney that hasn't taken the time to seriously study brain injuries and hire them. That's like saying, hey, look, I got this major brain injury. I want to go in with the flunky. I want to go in with a flunky that hasn't studied the injury that they're now going to represent for me. I know it sounds bizarre, and it's usually, it's too hard in chats online to be able to explain all this. But I am one that says there's no way that the attorney should not be educated on the condition that they represent. If they say to an insurer, oh my gosh, I think you should pay my client $100,000, $50,000, $200,000, $1 million. But you know what? This is such a significant condition. It's so significant that I haven't taken any time out of my life to spend any time studying it. But I think that you should take it very seriously. I mean, that's like crazy. Now, a lot of you might think, hey, I'm picking on attorneys. I'm not picking on attorneys. I think in the injury space, professionals have to be super professional. I think that the doctors have to be super professional. I think the standardization of spinal injuries needs to occur. They're not that difficult, and they need to be standardized. And I believe that the doctors need to be better at what they do. And of course, I believe that anybody, the insurer, the attorney, anyone that's looking at a patient's injuries should have to study the injuries. They should have to understand the injuries. They don't have to have a doctorate in the injuries. They should just study and understand the basics of the injuries. If you have an excessive motion problem or a spinal instability problem, they should know what that means. They should know how is that image. They should know how much excessive motion is excessive. They should know about disc herniations. They should know about fractures. They should know about those things in general, right? Because if you don't, if you're blind and you don't understand the condition, then there's a lot of misunderstanding that you're going to do. If you know nothing about a subject, it is so easy to get fed information that is false or incorrect. So doctors, always on these podcasts, what I do is kind of a short riff on a topic, and hopefully you get something out of it. Look, we train the attorneys. We train attorneys. Attorneys can go to smartinjurylawyers.com. For doctors that are interested in our program, it's smartinjurydoctors.com. And it's very easy for us to engage with our materials, to get a feel for what we're all about. Doctors, I appreciate your time, your attention. This is recorded on 12/16/2022. So have a very nice holiday this holiday season. And I look forward to presenting to you on the next podcast.
You've been listening to the Smart Injury Doctors Podcast, the #1 audio production show for professionals in the U.S. injury market that want to deliver better injury services to the patients, clients, or insureds they serve. If you like what you heard today, please leave us a review and don't forget to join us on our next program.